about that people is more important than the issue of war crime court. Equally so, why it's true that for me, I really believe in this economic life because the economic sensitivity is very much important to the survivability of the society. Injustice and, in fact, cruelty that took place in the country needed to have been addressed so that there won't be any reoccurrence of such. Because if we allow that to continue, someone will say, okay, these guys did it before and they got away with it and they got rich and they have positions, so I can do the same. I think that's the main reason why people are recommending that the war crime court, the TRC process should take place. So it's important for us to address that. As for me, I believe it's very cardinal.
Thank you.
To discourage the act.
Thank you, Mr. Zuo. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Focus on Liberia, and this is our Tough Talking Thursday. This is where we call it as it is. We talk tough, and the issues we are discussing today, the leader positions of our leaders, being the opposition or government, on the issue of the establishment of a war and economic crimes court. Quite recently, there is a statement that came from Mr. Cummings and the ANC establishing their position firmly in favor of the War Crimes Court. Another statement came from the Unity Party, signed by the Assistant Secretary and I believe the Secretary, calling for the establishment of a War Crimes Court. Carl, you listened to the statements, what they said before and what they are saying now. What's your opening statement?
Well, I mean, I think everyone has spoken to the issue of politics, and sometimes politicians are supposed to be spokespeople. They're supposed to be the mouthpiece for their constituents. So as public opinion shifts, it's normal for politicians to also shift their opinions because they are striving to lead their people. And also to be the voice for their people. So a lot of times people think that politicians are out here just pulling stuff out of a hat. And unfortunately, I think that people are looking at this in one narrow, as one narrow solution. There needs to be, I think, after doing a little bit of studying of Rwanda, I looked at Rwanda, I looked at Sierra Leone, I looked at Nazi Germany. And I also, right now, I'm trying to look at a couple of other countries as well. But Rwanda, South Africa, that's the obvious one. There needs to be, in my opinion, a combination of reconciliation and justice. Because none of the models that I've reviewed seem to be a good fit for Liberia. What happened to Rwanda was very one-sided. Only one group was really targeted and prosecuted. And so if you are a Tutsi and you did things wrong, you didn't get punished, you didn't get, you weren't brought to justice. It was like you were excused because the atrocities you committed were in response to a genocide, which is, so this genocide committed by the Hutus was so egregious that anything that was done to Hutus after that is okay, including what was done by the current president of Rwanda, who was accused of a basically scorched earth approach, burning villages and killing tons of people. So when our political leaders are addressing this issue, they do so vaguely. They're not explaining the details of how, and that's my problem. So you can say, I want war crimes court. You need to, in your statement, describe for Liberian people what that is going to look like based on what you've discussed with your constituents, the people that are supporting you. Come up with a clean roadmap to success so that people can buy into it. But if you just throw these terms out there and leave it to people's imagination about what it's going to look like, people get defensive. So wait a minute, y'all want to go after the papi that rescued us from that other town? The people who are coming for us, he stepped in. Oh, y'all want to go after the people because, so we have not had an opportunity for our leaders to actually explain to us what they want, and the citizens as well. The Liberian citizens have a responsibility to articulate what we want our leaders to do. And if we want reconciliation and justice, if we want a holistic approach, we need to tell our representatives, let them go to the House and try to reverse the amnesty bill and present a bill that looks like something we want. But Liberia, you know, we don't do things in the proper order. We don't do things correctly. People can just jump up and throw phrases out there. We say, oh, yeah, I'm going to build roads. I'm going to transform the country. I'm going to do, how are you going to do it? What is your roadmap? We got to start demanding some details from these people. Let them explain exactly what they're going to do. And that's where I'll rest.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and I go back to you, Depu. What, in your view, Call is leading to is this is where their constituents are right now. But in your view, what is causing this shift? I listened to the audio recording of Mr. Cummings' statement talking about enough is enough. We need to have the war crime court. I also listened or read the statement from the Unity Party, which is a complete 360. What do you think is driving this change in what they are saying towards the war crimes court?
You know, the problem there is politicians, sometimes they look at the situation, public sentiment, and start reacting. But one of the points that I think Cole raised clearly is the how component. And the TRC process mentioned that I think the situation here is that whether Liberians are willing to have a retributive justice or they want to have a restorative justice. And I think she's saying we should blend, which of course sometimes you don't know who is going to be the actor at the time. So one of the things, in fact, if you listen to Cummings, you listen to Waka, you listen to Weah, President Weah himself, even while he was in opposition, he insisted war crime court. But they have not been able to tell Liberian people what type of process, system we're looking for. Do we want a justice restorative we're looking for or retributive? Like that, it becomes clear to the citizens to know what they want to do. Again, according to Cummings, he said enough is enough. One of the things that keep hurting people is that when someone happens to do something to you and the person is saying sorry and leave the scene and say, you know what, without remorse that, look, indeed he meant it or she meant it, it calms down the anger. But wherein the person still being seen and not really having remorse to say, you know what, I'm sorry for what I did. I just have to do it because they forced me to do it. That's another side of it that's happening now in Liberia. You know, if most of the actors were saying, look, this thing we did it because of the situation we find ourselves, and this is a stopping point, and now we should have a tipping point for reconciliation and peace among us. And someone say, you know what, I'm going to be reaching out to those that were hurt in the villages, like the TRC process that Mr. Bwaka talking about, the Palava Hall. People in the town hall, you're going to go to a town hall meeting, and those who know that they participated, they heard other family members come and say, you know what, we are from the same village, this thing here, we did it, and we wronged few people, it was due to the crisis. No one is doing that.
Mr. Zua, let me stop you and just something. If they were saying these things before and now they are changing, are they lying to us? Are they fake? Are they only saying these things for votes?
No, for me, I think while it's true that we're thinking that they have done it for vote, one of the things that is happening to Liberia is that we are not being scientific in our approach, in our thinking. If the people have done survey, if you've done a survey, for example, like I challenged one organization some years back on statistics on citizen response. You engage a citizen and say, what do you think? Yesterday, maybe in 2005, the perception was that, okay, no, this thing is too much, let us not do it. So what happened in 2011, after 2011 election, there was different opinion. Now you've come to 2017. So the thing that there is that the variable that existed in 2005 will not be the same variable in 2021. That's why you see the politician acting like that. So it's always good for us to be factual in data collection and get response and make our decision based on some of these facts.
Yeah.
Other than that, you will see people will be shifting the goalposts because they are politicians. They are looking at the sentiments. Realistically, justice means justice. You need to make sure that justice is served. The citizen themselves, what they are yearning for, the reason why you hear the politicians are talking about is because Many people who should be the one to say we are sorry or we are doing this or to change the dynamics of the situation themselves are being seen as major actor and making another decision. And the citizens are now feeling bad and they say, oh, but then we need to go on the side of the citizens.
Mr. Cooney, let's call it as it is. What do you think? These politicians are changing. I mean, they are not even telling us, okay, I said this before, but because of X, Y, Z, I'm saying this now. They are saying that like they never said this before. Like President Weah, he said, I have not one day called for, since I came here, called for war crimes court. Mr. Cummings is saying like, he's saying enough is enough, as if this has been his position all along. Why are they not telling us that, hey, we are changing because times have changed? Go ahead, Mr. Cummings.
Because Dennis, let me tell you, one of the things that change our politicians' behavior is their craving for international constituency instead of the local constituency. A lot of Liberian politicians, they have their attention fixed towards international acceptance than towards local acceptance. How many of these politicians have convened town hall meetings throughout the country to gauge the response of the Liberian people with regard to the war crime court? How many representatives, how many senators, how many political leaders? We are hearing this song because Uncle Sam is singing this song. That's why we are hearing it. And it sounds good to say it, to look good in Uncle Sam's eye. If Uncle Sam had not given the little warning regarding the Johnson ascendancy to the defense chairmanship, which he held before, Uncle Sam didn't talk, so it was not a problem. He held that position 12 years ago. But because Uncle Sam didn't raise any issue, we were cool with it. Now Uncle Sam is raising the issue. Every politician want to be seen as acceptable towards Uncle Sam. That is the tragedy of our politics. We design our developmental program to please international partners instead of our people. We design our social, everything we design for international audience. So this is why you sing this song, even though most of them don't believe it. Look, what it brings to my mind is like this repeal of Obamacare. You know how many times Republicans said it? Like one guy was saying, even while Obama was in the mansion, in the White House, even though it was impossible to repeal Obamacare, but because it could get them vote, it could get them acceptance, they would go, who will repeal Obamacare? Who will repeal Obamacare? So because these politicians, they think that by saying, I'm for the war crime code, I'm for the war crime code, they will get international acceptance. But having made that point, is that if Liberians want to take this decision, this would be the decision by the people of Liberia. They will have pressure the elected representatives to establish the court. The court will be established by law. My sister made reference to existing amnesty laws. You can't have a war crime code with all the amnesty laws existing. So there has to be a process that will lead to it. It's not just political talking points. And the reason why we hear all the talking about because everybody wants to dance to Uncle Sam. Basically, for me, that's the only thing I see, and I change. Nothing else.
Thank you. Carl, look like this is the only time you have agreed with Mr. Cooney. So we are only saying this because of Uncle Sam.
Well, I mean, I thought his point was correct in some ways. I mean, it's not 100% correct. Multiple things can be true at the same time. One of my mentors used to always say this: 2 things can be true at the same time. So I think that public sentiment is shifting, and because public sentiment is shifting, I think U.S. foreign policy is also shifting, right? So some of the monsters that were armed to carry out, proxy wars for the larger Cold War, and that stuff just generated and then became our Civil War, right? So the so-called international community had a huge role to play in our conflict, has huge responsibility, culpability in our conflict. It's blatant. It's not something that we need to not talk about. I think that politicians who are calling for war crimes court and negating to mention the role of these large, global organizations in our problems, I think they're failing the Liberian people. And I think that's the first step to tell the truth, is to start at the source. Why did we have this conflict? Who instigated it? Who armed people? Who trained people? Who unleashed them upon innocent people in the villages? Who gave them the resources to carry out what they did? And that needs to be addressed as well. So, I mean, and of course, we need to address the monsters that entered people's communities and homes and raped people and murdered people and buried children alive, and all the horrible stories that we hear about what happened and things that people saw with their own eyes. I have never met anyone of Liberian descent that didn't have a horrible traumatic experience between 1980 and present. Not one Liberian person is not affected. So people talk about the victims of war as if they are all dead. We are still here. We are also victims of this war. And yes, we want justice. How is it going to look? And, you know, I will reemphasize, you know, that these politicians are not looking at the root cause. If you don't address the causal factor, if you don't understand the problem, you will never come up with a solution. Until I hear them articulate the problem correctly, until I hear them articulate the causal factors correctly, I will not believe their sincerity about getting the situation resolved. Of course, we need justice. Justice is the basis of everything. Without justice, you cannot have a functioning society. But what is it going to look like? And when are they going to call out, you know, the actual actors?
And call is the sincerity factor that people are beginning to question, right? Because you can't just get up, and even to say that the drum beat for war crimes code is harder now. I think it was even more under President Sirleaf when Momba Molu and the rest of the people were demonstrating all the time.
Yes,
right.
Emmanuel Savis, Mike. There's a lot of people, social activists, political activists, not civil servants, but civil. Just citizens groups, organizations that are non-governmental, that have been consistently calling for justice. That's where the sincerity in the movement is. The sincerity in the movement is with people like that. They haven't changed. It doesn't matter who's the president. It doesn't matter who's in charge. They have been consistently demanding justice. And the responsibility of the politicians is to listen to this consistency and say, hey, my citizens want justice. What are we going to do? Liberia is a country where all of its descendants are speaking with different accents. You've got Liberian people with Ghanaian accents. You've got me, you know how I talk. You've got people all dispersed all over the world because of this horrific travesty. There's not even a cultural cohesion among Liberians because of this devastating period of Liberian history. And we have our politicians sugarcoating it. Oh, y'all don't come back here. We'll take away your citizenship rights. We'll do this. I mean, these are some of all of this nonsense stems from the war. The incredible brain drain. Look at how many able-bodied, brilliant minds were sucked out of the Republic of Liberia, left a void that has been filled by people that are not capable or qualified to do the things that they're being asked to do. And it's because of this war. We can blame almost everything on the war.
Yeah.
You know, the devastating, you know, cycle continues. We're still being victimized by things that happened in that war. You know, your absence, my absence, all of us on this panel are not in Liberia because of that war.
Yeah. Mr. Zuo, maybe Cummings and the rest of the people that talk about the economy, maybe they are right. And I'm asking you because you're an economist, right? It looks like people are angrier now and wanting war crime code because they are suffering.
Yeah.
Mr. Zuo.
Yes, I think that's one reality. The reality here is that if things were getting better, things were improved for people to actually see the difference. Some people might be, yes, comfortable to say, yes, I'm living comfortably in Liberia. Equally so, we cannot rule out the fact that the people need justice. Let me be very frank with you. You know, the justice we're talking about cannot only be about social justice. Economic justice are all the things that even contributed to what we have today.
Exactly.
And realistically, it has actually compounded. That's one of the main things you gotta look at. If the citizens see themselves that they have their wealth taken away by a few people and not accounting for it, and they live lavishly at the expense of other people, you expect them to actually call for justice. So that's one of the reality that is happening in Liberia right now. And besides that, let me say, I want to say that Liberians themselves over the years, in as much as people look at them, Mr. Kony said we are dancing at the tune of the international partner, Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam, yes, it's true, but one thing that there is that they themselves are looking in and out. They have seen what is happening. Yesterday, we said, yes, we're going to allow ourselves, you say, Taylor, you vote for, you came on mine, you came on power, I will vote for you. And in the end, out of suppression, people made a decision, they voted in 1997, and he got the entire the leadership, the PR system, he got all of the seats. But again, he never made a difference to say, you know what, this thing that I did was wrong. I was finding a way to reach to the top. So as I said earlier, this is a stopping point. So I'll provide a tipping point. Let me reconcile. It became a different story.
Yeah.
So that led us to another war. So in as much as we want to bring the international community, our society itself, leadership, we are having leadership challenge. Even one of the things that I said last time is that the same war mentality is still dragging on in the society. In fact, during the war, someone said a CEO. When anything that belongs to the CEO, no one touches it. Now, those who are politicians, they have become the owner of the wealth, so no one touches anything. And no one owns anything. You are represented, you have everything. Oh, the honorable have everything. This kind of mentality will make the citizen to actually rise up and say, you know what, this is where the angers are coming from. You know, and personalization of the state. And we've seen it everywhere now, personalization of the state, that almost everything that people who are having power have more wealth than those who don't have. And these are things that led us to the Civil War. So it's important that we erect the checkpoint. That's why people are calling for the War Crime Code. Especially so the War Crime Code is there, but the economic crime is very much important for us to actually tackle as well. For me, I think the economic crime code is very important.
Thank you. And my last question on this is, you know, the insincerity of these politicians, and they've been supported by citizens. There is a bird, it lays one egg every year. The last time I heard Mr. Cummings talking tough was July 26, 2019, when he made a trip, and he said he was this was the first time, but some ridiculous statement he made. He was talking tough. Since then, so just like that bird that lays one egg every year, Mr. Cummings is talking tough once every other year. This time he's tough now, talking about enough is enough. VP Boakai too is talking tough. In his speech, he talked about, oh, the men with wheelbarrow boys, and you know, everybody's talking tough now. Mr. Kony, and all of you, let me start with you, Mr. Kony. Are these politicians fickle?
I like that word, but let me find my own word. they may very well be, but you know, many of our politicians, they are opportunistic, and this is why I've always advocated that for us to have meaningful change in Liberia, it has to be driven from the bottom. When people drive change, they own the change, and they can improve their conditions. I do recognize the enormous powers of the politicians, the enormous powers of the president, the legislators, but nobody is so powerful to withstand the power of the people. And so if you look at this whole war crime advocacy, we talk about the effort of grassroots organization. And I think this is where the genuine advocacy lies. Like my sister here made reference to Emmanuel Service. I'm applauding that young man's effort to try to carry on the signature drive that will tell Liberians and other people that this is what the Liberian people need, so that our leaders can act. We we have to show the genuineness of what we want. And we have to be willing to fight for it to happen. I always said all of the good systems in the world that we point our hand to, they were not donated to those societies by anybody. They fought for it themselves. So the kind of change we want, we have to be driven by us. If the Liberian people want a war crime court, we need to come together as Liberians and define the how the sister is talking about. Because politicians, they're not going to give us the how. They only invest in talking points. So this is why they're not telling us the how. So I don't put too much interest in those politicians. I put interest in the effort of the people to create the kind of condition that they want, so that they can make the decisions that is in their own self-interest.
Cole, I see what the president engaging in, what some may call passive aggression. The president is saying, for instance, first of all, these were the people that were in favor of war crimes court before they got to power. Now he's saying, oh, since I came to power, I never did this. Even though the victims wanted, the perpetrators wanted, the Liberian people wanted. So I'm passing the buck, I'm throwing it at the feet of the legislature. I thought that statement was unfortunate, disappointing, and very disgraceful. What's your take?
At George Weah's actions, because I have not seen him to be a great philosopher or a great intellectual or someone who has any type of deep or profound, analysis to present to people, not once. He's a very likable person. He's a superstar, a soccer superstar, a global soccer superstar. But I very rarely hear anything profound or of substance coming from athletes. It's rare. So I would not have expected President Weah to say anything other than what he said. I would not have expected him to lead the charge. I don't think he was elected for that purpose. And we need to be truthful. Yes, he's occupying the presidency, but we cannot expect him to conduct himself, in a manner that's different from how he's conducted himself his entire life. And, expecting him to lead the charge on this, I think, is disingenuous for all of us, including seditionists. They know who they elected, who they pushed forth. So don't put that burden on the man. The man that gained that draw.
The man is the president, Carl.
He's the president because he is a likable football hero that came from the bottoms and worked his way to the top. And people love him for that. And they rewarded him with the presidency, not because he was capable of leading the country, but because they like him. And that's the issue with democracy. People don't look at the terms of reference for the position that they're electing people for. They elect people because they like them. And, while you should like your politicians, you should also make sure that they're capable of doing what you're asking them to do. So I'm not surprised by what President Weah said, and I would not expect him to do anything out of character. I would be shocked if he came out with some type of detailed presidential statement about which way we're going to move forward. So until we get a president that is in a position to do such a thing, we have to look at our civil society groups. We have to look at the handful of lawmakers that we have that are also prepared to really analyze this type of situation. We have a serious capacity problem in the leadership. It's one thing to have a capacity problem in the population. We have a capacity issue in the leadership. That is a nightmare for a country like Liberia.
Wow. Thank you. Depu, let me go to you, and I want to ask about VP Boakai. Come on now. This was 12 years. The TRC came out with recommendation banning 30 persons. For 30 years, those like, for example, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. So if the TRC recommendation concerning the ban of these people from taking part in politics, Mr. Boakai wouldn't have become vice president 2011. So after they ignored the TRC recommendation, they did nothing about implementation. They did nothing about the establishment of war crimes court. 12 years later, no, 15 years later, he's coming back. His party is saying, we want war crimes court. Will you tell Mr. Boakai, with all due respect, can you shut up, please, about war crimes court?
From the interview that Mr. Barker just had and listened to, he actually called for a war crime code.
Yeah,
But he's talking about the methodology in terms of the Palawa Hut. But let me say this. Let me backtrack a little bit about the first question you had about whether our politicians are fickle. Yes, it is true. It's a reality. And what is making them like that is because we have given them the edge. People, we're not being genuine in our interaction with the public. We have not been genuine in our leadership action. In fact, most of the political parties, that's one of the main reasons why you see people move from one political party to another, because there's no system to check them to know what are your record from the other party, why are you coming here? How do we entrust people with leadership? Is this person really genuine? Does he really care for family? How does he take care of his neighbor? How does he take care of his people? What kind of leadership style this person have? How many person have this person led before we make a decision? So these are some of the challenges that we've been faced with as a country, and we need to really face it, because like that, we will not have people faking at the highest level in leadership. Now, to Ambassador Barker's position, clearly, he was a vice president, which I accepted that, yes, he was a vice president. The reality is that if the record those days, people were banned from it, and he needs to implement, is the will of the people. Once you take leadership, the people will should prevail. And that's one of the things should be said clearly as a leader and say, look, you know what? Whatever mandate given me, I'm going to go ahead and enforce it. If the Liberian people are calling for the war crime code, we definitely going to enforce that. And that's what I expect Ambassador Boakai and almost all of the candidates to have done. Surprisingly, President Weah, who actually was the one calling, today he's talking about what do we do about the economy, meaning that he's benefiting from the same war, the perpetrators. He's benefiting from other sources, economic opportunity, because he's not going to be questioned. So that's why. So we need to face our leader and the citizens themselves. The citizen action is very much important. We will reach a point in Liberia. Let me say this to you: that citizens will be reacting from the battle box. You can check. In fact, retention at the Capitol building is a problem. Most of the people are losing seat, especially at the level of Senate. Only people who have been retaining seat there, like Prince Johnson, because of his whole record in Nimba, and Joel Howard, current vice president, got it. But the rest of just one term in Senate, in the House of Senate, one term.
Right.
And we're going to see that. In fact, 2023. I will tell you this clearly, that from my experience and interaction in Monrovia, you ride in Texas, and you also riding keke around just for me to how the economy is moving. The citizens are very angry, and you'll see many of the lawmakers will be one-term lawmakers. And that's how the transformation will start, and the citizen action will be felt.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Focus on Liberia Tough Talking Thursday. My guest, Mr. Depu Zuo, Mrs. Carl Famler, and Mr. Waymond Cooney. Let's go to our next issue, the post-Brumskine Liberty Party. Since the passing of Councillor Brumskine, peace be to his ashes, the Liberty Party has been little unstable in my view. It started with the ascendancy of Mr. Musa Bility to the chairmanship, which caused a bit of an uproar in the party and caused some people to even leave. Then later we saw that the Zako and Dillon fight when Senator Johnson was elected on white ballot for the chairmanship of the Defense Committee. Then it became a fight, a little tension in there, like, oh, Mr. Zago, why didn't you contest? So there was a little friction there. We also saw the spar between Senator Johnson and Senator Yumble Kanga, even though Senator Johnson is not there, is not part of the Liberty Party, but there was a little fight there. We also saw, most importantly, the leaked audio where two executives of the Liberty Party were discussing or making their plans, which was recorded. We still don't know by whom. So looking at the Liberty Party after Councillor Charles Brumskine, is it falling apart, and how does that affect their standing in the CPP? Let me start with you, Mrs. Famulin.
So, Liberty Party, while Brumskine, may his soul rest in peace, was still alive, split at the second round election, right? So it's not a situation like Brumskine was gone before the Liberty Party started to dismantle and reassess itself. I have my suspicions, but you have some of the people who were closest to Brumskine, some of the very powerful and resourceful and extremely educated people, like Funati Kofa and others, who I know very well, have a lot of respect for Councillor Kofa. I also know Councillor Kofa is a mastermind, and it can be a diabolical thing. It can be a diabolical thing. So Councillor Kofa went to CDC. My good friend Abu Kamara, who is a staunch Liberty partisan, went to CDC. Someone I've known practically my entire life, that's almost like family to me, Israel Kansaya, went to CDC. These people, and many others, I'm just naming the ones that I know personally. These are people that I've either grown up knowing all my life or I've worked with professionally. Abu Kamara and Funati Kofa, I've worked with professionally in Liberia. And they have gone to CDC. Their very close friends, Darius Dillon and others, did not. They expect us to believe that they are no longer part of the same unity party. It looks to me like this classic divide, yourselves among the opposition and the ruling party, and still work for a common cause. You will never see Funati Kofa saying anything negative about Darius Dillon, nor Abu Kamara, nor Israel Kansaya. Those guys, in my opinion, y'all watching, I don't believe you. I think all of you guys are still together, and I still think that, there's a shadow Liberty Party that you all are in, and then what you're presenting out there, one group in opposition, one group in the ruling party, that's what I think is going on. The chairman, Musa Bilite, campaigned heavily for George Weah in the runoff election. I have video, I have photographic evidence, because Liberians have a short-term memory. If y'all don't remember Musa Bilite beating drum for George Weah to be elected, now he's supposed to be the chairman of one of the opposition parties. Does that make sense? I mean, they're playing a really complex game of chess, and I admire it. I'm not putting them down. This is how they get what they need. And I think, this whole Zargo thing with Dillon, it's irrelevant. Senator Johnson, out of all of those people in the Senate, like it or not, war crimes or no war crimes, is actually the most qualified for that role. He has been sitting on ECOWAS Parliament, ECOWAS Security Committee. That man knows things that none of those senators know. Unfortunately, this is a fact. He has sat on ECOWAS Security Committees. Other than Brownie Samukai, I think Prince Johnson probably knows more about regional security than anyone else in Liberia. And it would be the only reason to not have Prince Johnson chair that committee would be because of war crimes that he has not yet been convicted of. So if we're to be sincere, how can we expect them to not elect Prince Johnson as the chairman, except when you want to bring in something that he's been granted amnesty for?
Thank you.
The whole thing is a joke.
Thank you. Mr. Cooney, I know you want the Liberty Party to fall apart and eventually affect the CDC. So this CPP. But what you make of this whole Liberty Party after Brumskine? You see, there are some, and I agree with Carl, there are a lot of things that went on even while Councillor Brumskine was alive. But sometimes when you have a leader and he has a strong grip on power, because all the years we knew Liberty Party, it was synonymous to Councillor Charles Walker Brumskine. Now he's gone, and maybe power is kind of shared among them. There is chaos. Will you agree? Hold on, Mr. Kune. Go again. Mr. Kune, go.
I said there seems to be chaos, but I really not praying for the dissolution of the Liberty Party or any political party for that matter. I believe in multi-party democracy, and I believe that our democracy can thrive if we have strong political institutions that will present competing ideas for the benefit of the country. Unfortunately, in Liberia for a very long time, political parties centers around individuals and few personalities, to the point where when those individuals leave the political party, or when there is friction among those individuals, the structure of that party is shaking. We have not seen parties coming together on the basis of shared ideas, of shared vision. It's just there is someone maybe that has the means to financially foot the party, or someone that is likable enough that we can all follow. So you see the mass movement of partisans from one party to the other. The entire leadership of the Liberty Party disappeared after the 2017 election, except Brumskine and a few holdouts. The entire leadership of the party disappeared. Besides Brumskine and a few holdouts like maybe DeLong. Those were the only people that were left to hold the fort. And now it appears that the popular person that is emerging in our party now is DeLong and then Kanga, because these are the people now that are winning elections. So you see the power play among them. To what extent that they hold on, to what extent that they make an impact in the larger CCP, that remains to be seen. Most Liberian political parties fall into the highly centralized structure that I always talk about. They all based in Monrovia. What are the branches throughout the county? How many times do they hold county conventions? What are the leaders that come from these counties? Every leader is from Monrovia. To the point where even if the people having events in other countries, the boss parties from Monrovia there. Delegates are taken from Monrovia there. So I don't see that. I don't know what the future of the Liberty holds beyond the CPP collaboration. It was actually fading before the passing away of Councillor Brumskine, may his soul rest in peace. So I don't know how they were failing the CPP winning an election. I don't see how the Liberty Party will stand after the 2023 election.
Mr. Zuo, economics play in all these things. According to what people are saying, the party was broke, and so Musa Belete with a deep pocket stepped in and took leadership. And since then, there has been brewing tension as to people are questioning, why Musa Belete, is it because he bribed you and all that? And now there is this problem of where will the Liberty Party be when it comes to the CPP standard bearership between Mr. Cummings and Mr. Boakai. We heard in the audio tape, you guys are playing their cards very well. What's happening to the Liberty Party?
I said earlier that we are not genuine in our politics as Liberians. And one of the things there, first of all, how do we derive at a decision to establish a political party? What philosophy or ideology do we really derive and say this political party is established today, so that tomorrow we can train the cadres or the young generation to actually learn that philosophy and believe their practice and live with it? That's a challenge we have, and that's the problem we face, because we having political individuals and not political institutions. The Liberty Party was established when Senator Brumskine was trying to see how best to become the most powerful guy challenging Taylor when he had a fallout with Taylor. And on the UL campus, I got many of my colleagues who had a FOB. And in fact, my roommate, Isaac Jackson, came to me and said, look, the first thing, I don't believe in Brumskine because he has a support for the whole status of wholesale agreement with ECOMOS. ECOMOS should sign while defending Taylor. Not because he had a fallout with Taylor, I should be identified with such a man. You know, and all of a sudden we look, Liberty Party got established by Brumskine. And realistically, it's one of the party that initially said it was a tribalistic hegemony, that it won't go anywhere. Because almost everyone who were in a hierarchy were either related or connected to the man Brumskine. And you could see the growth trend. Realistically, institutional development was not the focus. It was about individual opportunity to ascend to power. And that's the problem that Liberty Party is faced today, because in the first place, I just analyzed one of my colleagues in 2017. I said, why is it true that you guys trying to praise Brumskine? There's something that you have to observe about a leader. The first running mate that Brumskine had, Amelia Ward, he had a fallout after the election. She was no longer fun around. Another Siakor came on board. After the election, Siakor was gone. Then 2017, you see him going for Conway. I said, but do you think this is a genuine institution? Is there anything that we can observe from the party? For me, I don't go for that. It's better for us to really build a system and we trust it. So with or without this person, it can go, it can foster and it can prosper. That's the reason why you see almost all of these people are going all over the place hunting for opportunity. And when it is like that, the society becomes very unstable because those who make leadership decisions themselves are unstable. And we need to look at that realistically, not only with Liberty Party, in fact, across board. Not because I'm from Unity Party today. It's one of the reasons why I see Liberal Action Party was a party that was genuinely established and people went into it with a philosophy. And the rooster you see there has a meaning for it. So people were going into the party with genuineness. Even up to today's day, after the merger of the three political parties, these people still yearn and say, oh, Action Party, they miss it. Because they were taught what to do. So we need to be looking at this across the board and say, look, how do we work it out better? So what is happening to Liberty Party, to me, is obvious. I anticipated that a long time because it was all about individual. And once this individual erred, the whole institution will definitely fall.
That's a good point, Epu. And I was preparing for the show because I had a section on tribal politics. I was talking to a longtime member of the LPP, and he said, you know, these parties, they all around individuals, or sometimes even an ethnic group. So you see, unlike the LPP, the UPP, and I like the example you give of the Action Party, because it was around the same time when LPP and UPP were banned from taking part in the 85 elections. These people a lot of them went to Action Party. And so at that time, you could see in the party, you have about maybe 3 or 4 or even 10 potential standard bearers. People came from all parts of the country. It's not just one ethnic group or one class of people. We don't see that nowadays. And so that point,
I want to come in. You know, that's the point that Musa Bedete ascendancy, realistically, if Liberty Party was checking and having issue of integrity that each of them trying to push, I don't think Musa Bedete would have ascended to chairmanship. And if that was a genuine decision they're going to be making, we shouldn't be looking at people because the man is going to provide resources. You know, political party, the parties themselves can provide the little resources they have. If they believe in a cause, they can pay for it. It doesn't require you riding. If you ride a car that is a stolen car, and the police pull you over and say, look, this car is stolen. And you say, oh, the car was stolen by Mr. Cooney. The reflection will not only be on Mr. Cooney because you who rode a car and you got caught in the process, you're also considered as part of the criminal. I don't know. So people should not be saying, oh, I want this money, so we'll go for it. And the deep pocket also got big problem. I'm not trying to say that just to one person, but we need to be very sincere with our politics. So tribal dimension will come in. Oh, Musa will have more people behind him, so therefore he might win the Muslim vote, he might win the Mandingo vote. So let's get him there, and he has money. But is there any value that we subscribe to as a party that we know that this man stands for the value? If that's a question we are asking as a political party members, then it will give an opportunity to make a right decision.
Thank you. Last point before we go to our comments, Mr. Cooney, I think what, hold on, Mr. Cooney, I'll bring you. I think what Depu is expressing there about integrity, I think we threw that through the roof long time, through the window long time, when we started going for the money or some association for this party. Take for instance, I'm not picking on Benina Uri, head of the Liberty Party, but this guy, according to the TRC report, he was, he committed economic crime. But now, because of his money, sometimes people come around him. You look at the CPP, the reason the CPP came together was not on any ideology, because you couldn't say they were the highest in vote, because ALP never had vote, right? But it was because of the deep pocket. And other parties came around because they said, well, Cole, you disagree with me, I'll give you a chance to come in. So ALP now has money and is able to pay for a lot of things, and so they got people around. They're still hanging around as a party because Benina Ure is kind of a rich man now. So this whole idea of throwing everything else through the window because there's something about the person we like or the party is built around one person, it's not for Liberty Party alone. What's your take, Mr. Cooney? And then Carl can come in.
Yeah, before I come to that point, yes, I just wanted to buttress the point that my brother Zoe made. Look, the ideas of political parties as we used to know them, all of these political individuals that say they are political parties, go to these parties, ask the parties is. They will not even be able to tell you the symbol of the party. Zoe made mention of the rooster as being the symbol of love. I used to remember the broom as being the symbol of LPP, and you ask yourself, besides the chanting and besides all of the hours put into dancing for a candidate, what do these parties do? I recently remember the Labron People's Party engaging in adult literacy. I used to remember parties engaging workers' union to educate them about their rights. Market women. I remember when parties used to engage people about voting. So ask yourself today, besides parties meeting and everybody saying they say, what are the political parties doing? What are they doing besides we want the president for president? It will tell you how far we have to go. So because the institutions are not granted in any philosophy, they're not granted in any shared vision other than come and make me president for me to inherit the presidency, inherit the system, even no recommendation on changing the system. We just want to take over the system as it is. Is there any political party realistically looking at the centralized political structure we have in Monrovia that subjugate the entire country? Is there anybody putting suggestion? Even look at our national legislature. Do we really need a full-time legislature? So nobody is coming with this. Everybody just want to be president. So this is why you find the shifting of people from one party to the other because everybody looking for the power. If they appear the power is going there, we all going there because we don't want to be left behind. And that is the instability of the political party system that if we don't take time, will lead to instability in the long run. So this is why we having these challenges. It's not just the Liberty Party, it's almost every party down there. Can they, for example, can the CDC survive without George Weah? Can the CDC survive without George Weah? That's a question that is out there. Can the ANC survive without ABC? It's a question out there. besides ABC? What else is holding the ANC? Omer Bwaka is the one holding the Unity Party. If Omer Bwaka has not stood up, maybe it would be a dead institution by now.
That's not true.
You see, so this is the tragedy that that is part of our political process. I still do have the hope that over time we will overcome it, and our institutions will be stronger. And my faith is based in the fact that actually what we call multi-party democracy today, we just started here about 12, 15 years ago. So my hope has always been, as we go forward, we will improve, these institutions will improve, political parties will become stronger, our democracy will be better. That's my hope. I hope I'm right.
So,
Cole, go ahead. You have a lot of disagreement here.
very much so. I think some of the problem that we have is that we speak from a position of misinformation a lot of times. We were there at the inception of the CPP. CPP was created out of a group called Opposition Working Group. Right after the results of the 2017-2018 elections, when George Weah was announced, many people that were in opposition went over to CPC. Because just like Mr. Cooney said, they want to follow the power. But there were a lot of people, a group of us, who said, we need to save the state. We need to save Liberia. Because we knew what was going to happen. We knew the level of incompetence that was going to come into a very volatile situation. You talk about the rooster that is on the Unity Party logo. I too followed that rooster. That rooster represents me. I come from LAP as well. And my family, my mother comes from LAP as well. And we have a rooted ideology. It is not just about a personality. It was not built for Jackson Fiat-Dole. It was not built for Edward Kesley. It was built around the principles that these two brilliant men established, and the two brilliant men, their legacies merged into Unity Party. Unity Party is not a cult of personality. It is not built around Joseph Boakai. Joseph Boakai happens to be the last elected standard bearer for the party. We could possibly go to a convention and bring somebody else in 2022. So we are not, some organization that was established around an individual trying to be president.
Cole, do you seriously believe there can be any standard bearer in the Unity Party for 2023 besides Joseph Boakai?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And I also agree that way too. It's possible. There are many qualified people.
Many qualified people.
If you step aside and you want to provide leadership and say, I want to step aside, I want to provide another chance, you can have many people and we can come right back.
The rules call for a convention.
I don't believe that.
I mean, that's fine, but the rules call for a convention. Yeah. And if there's a convention and somebody else stands up, there's an entire possibility. So that's a different issue. But what I also want to address is this question of ideology, decentralization, the massive decentralization efforts that took place for the first time, other than the decentralization of military and security apparatus before 2006, you had massive decentralization of many services, medical services. You have a hospital built in the northern part of Liberia, a massive hospital. You have road networks that extend. You have public transportation networks that extend outside of the central city. You have land authority offices all over the country. You have motor vehicles registration as far away as Zwedru. So we talk about decentralization. Liberia is extremely decentralized compared to what it was in 2006 because of the ideology of empowering people and citizens nationally. The challenges that were met by the Unity Party administration when they took over in 2005, it is you have to measure progress not only by the height that people obtain, but you have to also measure from the depths from which we've come. And no honest person living in Liberia in 2005 and living in Liberia in 2016 is going to say with any sound or sincere mind that they did not see tremendous efforts against great odds. And anyone who is running for president that does not recognize our capacity issues, our mental health issues, our lack of education, if people don't recognize what the problems are and they want to pretend that it's some easy road to solve Liberia's challenges, that person is either a liar or they are delusional. Liberia's problems are profoundly centered in every aspect of society. The water in the ground is being contaminated. We are living on top of piles of trash. The population is one of the least educated populations per capita on the planet. The UN has an IQ database. Because of the environmental pollution and the toxins that our children are ingesting, our children are having a disadvantage of stunted not only physical growth, but mental development as well. We have problems that are so immense right now happening in that country. Children having lead poisoning in central Monrovia at an alarming rate. Lead poisoning causes mental deficiencies that are irreversible. Irreversible, they cannot be corrected. If your mind is stunted and your growth is stunted, that can't be reversed. You can't change that. Once a person experiences mental or physical development of being arrested, it cannot be reversed. These are the kinds of profound challenges that we're talking about. No one president can fix that situation. We have to put sound people in the legislature. We have to put sound people in the judiciary. We have to put sound people in the executive. You cannot do this by putting people like Samuel Tware and McGill in these profoundly important positions.
Thank you, Cole. I don't see the much disagreement you were having, but let's take a short break.
The disagreement was about the Unity Party being a cult of personality. That was the disagreement.
That's understandable. Kuni is smiling, so I know. Yeah. Let's take a short break and bring in our comments. We want our viewers to be a part of this. They are commenting and they are coming at it. So we take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Sorry for that little break. We welcome you back. This is Focus on Liberia, and this is our Tough Talking Thursday. This is where we talk tough. We talk tough here on the issues, and we see Depu is talking tough, Carl is talking tough, Wilmot is also talking tough, and as I said, we have even our political leaders now. Mr. Cummings is talking tough. Mr. Buaka is also talking to us. But let's read some of our comments, and I will let our guests to kind of chip in. This one is Baboli Kamara. She spoke to the point, but her last comment told me who she is. We have to face the reality. Call, I think that's you. George said, who in the country would believe there is decentralization in Liberia? I do disagree with that, or call. When you still have the president appointing everyone in government. Well, decentralization and devolution of power, those two things, but
they're two different things.
We can talk about that. Ambassador Jimmy said, why you did not do it when you were in power for over 43 years? Milfy Deco, what is your view, Mr. Cooney? Don't tell us the politicians saying, what is your view? That's the question. He's talking about war crimes court.
Who was in power for 42 years?
I think it's Joseph Boakai. Taylor Ellen, we are saying you on this Southeastern platform again. So sure. I think I've been asked that why am I doing on this Southeastern platform? I think Martin Weirman Brown, if we embrace impunity, let us rest assured that the reoccurrence of another senseless war is imminent. In all fairness, we need justice. It may tarry, but it shall come to pass. Gary Howard, it has not been 42 years since the 1990 war. Secondly, it is because it was not during Ellen time, so it shouldn't be done. That's a question, and that's also still in reference to the War Crimes Court. Taylor Weir is back again. This is a Southeastern platform. They have never called Weir to order. Wilton Kettle, yes, the president said since he became president, he has now asked for War and Economic Crimes Court, and that's the truth. Fester is watching from Lisbon. We say thank you. Dr. Mariah Sidon, President, we are called for War Crimes Court prior to his presidency and recently at the UN. How soon we forget? Deng Segwe, ADD, that's Darius Dillon, spoke about the War Crime Code before America did. Sam Wallow, not true. United States has called for a full implementation of the TRC recommendation in the War Crimes Code for Liberia since 2005, when it demanded Charles Taylor hand over. Liberian politicians refused. I don't remember that. Maybe they did. Dennis S. Kake, that is exactly what PYJ has been saying all along, Mr. Cooney. Brown, again, the frustrating part of this is that those warlords are on the defensive. Can you imagine, Dennis? George Bulley is suing Dixon Sibo for assassination of character. We really need the court. I'm looking for, there's a few here about Maine. That's what I want to read. Sam Waller also said there is no genuine drumbeat, or there was no genuine drumbeat for war crimes under the Salif administration. Those who called for it then were ridiculed because it meant Salif would be held accountable and banned from politics for 30 years. Those are a few of the comments. There is this one. Okay. Mariah also said, host Dennis Jah, why are you not advocating for the victims? I see you bashing comments. A few comments there. Let me get your response. Let me start with Depu. You are on the Southeastern platform.
I don't know whether any platform or any discussion about Liberia should be regional issue. I think we need more inclusive development, and why it is true that there's a situation that other people think that they should give opportunity to their client or their people. When it comes to national issue, we need to discuss it openly and genuinely and solve our problem. This platform has provided that. Besides here, I've been on the Ashford Garden show, and in fact, I'm going to be trying to get a spoon as well to discuss some important issue. But when it comes to national development, I'd like to look at the progression we've made as a country and some of the lapses we have. How can we solve it? So it's important for me to face the fact. But one of the main things we're discussing here that is very much genuine to the growth and development of Liberia, be it economic, social, is the issue of war crime and economic crime. We need to face it. We need to resolve it. And I think most of the people who are making the comment, they are not disagreeing. The only thing that there is that they're trying to shift blame on who should have done what and what should do. So whether Madam Salif, President Salif didn't do it, does that mean that is it good for the society to let go what happened, or should we live with impunity? Can President Weah justify why he's not going to do it? If so, the next president that come in 2023, will they justify because it wasn't done by the two past presidents, will they not do it? We'll say no. And I said earlier that, look, if we don't take action, there will be citizens' action. And gradually, citizens are also taking action by saying, we don't want this guy back in power. So election will be making the right action. Liberians will make that decision at a ballot box. Just 2020 election, see what happened. How dismal the ruling party performed. And I will tell you, even any political party going forward, if you don't address the bread and butter issue, you didn't address the livelihood, the survivability, the capacity issue that Cole is talking about. How do you give the young people the opportunity to have skill to compute in the sub-region? I think from there, you're going to find, in fact, the ICT, the technology has made everything very simple now that people sit in Liberia and do study abroad. Mm-hmm. So you will see that young people will take advantage of the global economy and they will make progress, and leaders will be actually caught unaware. So I think it's better for us to prepare for that. Yeah. And those who are actually ascending to power, they need to have a strategic plan. And I'll say even President Weah, where he is, it's not late for him. He needs to change the tie around. The good leaders are people who identify a problem and say, you know what, I have a problem, let me solve it. And you get the right people to solve the problem for you. He can get it on course. But until he can acknowledge it, I see us going in the wrong direction.
Thank you. Let me read a few more comments. This one for you, Carl. Flomo Augustus P said, DeLon and Costa talking about war crimes code. That is why it looks like people talking about it. If DeLon and Costa were not talking about it, do you think you will be talking about it on this show? Come on, guys.
I mean, I've been hearing people talk about war crimes court. I've been talking about war crimes court, probably from a different angle. But, yes, of course, Costa has a very big voice and a lot of people listen to him, probably more than they should. A lot of politicians, listen to him because they think that he represents the common person's view. So what? It's being fought out there. I don't care who's beating the drum. Beat the drum. Let's talk about it. I myself have suffered great loss because of that war, and I don't think there's anybody, like I said earlier, that doesn't welcome the dialogue. My issue is the how. Costa's not saying the how. DeLon's not saying the how. Cummings gave a beautiful speech. He's not saying the how. I want to understand how we're going to get there. What's the roadmap? What's the plan? Are we going to put together a think tank committee to start laying things out? Let's start talking about some substance. I just don't like the surface, mediocre way of being discussed. It's too important. Instead of it just being a cliche, WCC, what is it going to look like? Let them break that down for us. Let's let them organize a group of people that are brilliant, and put those people together and let them come up with a roadmap for us.
Yeah. And to that, Augusta, we've had a lot of shows on war crimes code. We've had debate. And so follow us on YouTube and you will see. Mr. Kuni, let me get 2 comments here for you. JNB is a hypocrite that is already dead and being misused by those criminals that destroyed us for 12 years.
Y'all rude on this show.
He said the man is dead? Come on.
Don't repeat that kind of thing, sir.
Right.
Why would you repeat that? You didn't even read that comment. That's very rude.
Right. Mariah will say President Weah war crimes court and the economy can be addressed simultaneously. And Mountain said, you are absolutely right, Ms. Call Famula. President Weah was voted because of the love the people have for him, nothing else. Let me read this last one for Yasa Zinan before you come on. You are wrong, Mr. Man, because the time President Weah was calling for the War Crimes Code, it was because he had all those foreign peacekeepers in Liberia that could help with security if the War Crimes Code could come to Liberia during that time. Mr. Kuni, your response.
Before I go to that, the sister talk about decentralization. The sister talk about decentralization and made reference to services and other activities out there throughout the country. Clearly, that is not decentralization. When we talk about decentralization, we're talking about local self-government that empower the people in their respective regions to make both developmental and social decisions for themselves. What was outlined was just an aggressive expansion of central government to collect revenue and take all that revenue and bring it to Monrovia. That's not decentralization by any chance, by any stretch of imagination. And I also appreciate when she talked about the profound challenges that face the country and how we have to look at the depth from where the country was when Madam Salib and the Unity Party took it over. We also got to look at the enormous international goodwill that the country received during that time. The enormous gesture, the enormous financial support, both from the international community that was received, and compare that to the achievement of that government. That would be a fair comparison. And we should also always take into consideration the profound challenges that this country faced when we make demands that a government that is just in power for 3 years has not achieved anything when the other government was in power for 12 years and the profound problems still exist. So I think we do have an agreement on that the issue of Liberia is not a problem of one government. And it is really disingenuous and unfair to blame one government for the problems that we'll be encountering as a country, much more a government that is just in power for 3 years. On the issue of the War Crime Code, one of the readers asked me for my view. Of course, I support accountability. I support the War Crime Code. But like we all say here, we have to define how we want our code to be. It cannot be a political talking point. It is a political talking point when just yesterday, Alexander Benjamin Cummings was receiving a award from the chief perpetrator, one of the person identified as the chief perpetrator of the war crime in Liberia, when he was receiving awards from that person. And today telling the Liberian people enough is enough. When you receive a award from Idi Amin, you cannot talk about human rights violation. It is only in Liberia these things can be done. When Joseph Iman Boyka, who was vice president under Manaseli for 12 years.
Mr. Kune, who did Cummings receive the award from, if you can mention?
Please.
No, I just want you to forget.
When Iman Boyka, who was vice president for 12 years, and Ellie was identified as a chief perpetrator of war crime, and he sat there quietly and obediently, non-vocal on war crime, coming around to tell the Liberian code now that he's for war crime, that's a serious problem. When the CDC that was in the opposition that cried for war crime code come here and say that, well, that is not a priority for this, that is also a problem. So for me, we have to take the politics out of this. It is not a talking point issue. All of us here got people that were affected by this senseless war. So we want accountability. If the president of the country, if the president cannot establish court, our law does not allow the president to establish court. He has given it to our legislators, people that will pay $40 million every year to establish the court. Those are all that have ideas as to how the court can be formed, as to how the justice can be brought about. I think it is now our responsibility to appear to the legislators and impress upon them how to do it instead of just sitting back and blaming. It's just the unfortunate thing that I sometimes talk about. We cannot even come together on what benefits all of us. We can't come together and say, you know what, political vigilante shouldn't be part of our politics. We wait until one party committed, then we condemn it. if our party committed, we justify it. That kind of attitude will not carry anywhere. We can't commit to say we want clean voter roll. We politicize that discussion. Why should clean voter roll be politicized? We should all have an interest in having a very clean voter roll. You know, so these are the points.
Thank you.
If the country is to go forward, we have to stop the politicization of national issues that confront all Liberians and come with solutions that will benefit the people. I do not believe in an imperial presidency. So I don't believe because Georgia don't act, we can't get work people. I'm looking forward to a society where Liberians will take decisions irrespective of what the president says. That's the society I'm looking forward to.
Thank you. What I was trying to inject in there was when you said Mr. Comey received the highest award from a war crime or perpetrator. Who are you referring to?
Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was identified as one of the major perpetrators of the war, according to the TRC report. Alexander Comey received the Humane Order of African Redemption from her. I'm saying you cannot get a award from Idi Amin and then can't say you complain about human rights. That's not very worthy.
Come on, Mr. Kone, that's a stretch. But Cole, before you come in, there's a comment here for you, Cole, before so you can use 2 in 1. Alex June says he disagrees with you. Say Cole is speaking as a politician and supporter of Unity Party and CPP. Sierra Leone had worse challenges than Liberia. Botswana had fewer high school graduates in 1968 than Liberia in 2007. And Rwanda had deeper tribal issues. How could these countries overcome their issues and develop while Liberia couldn't? Bad leaders. Ellen Weah Boakai, we select bad leaders all the time. So and then we can conclude.
Yeah, so here's the thing. 2 things, 3 things, multiple things can be true at the same time. Not because one thing is true does not mean that other things are not true. So we have to understand that truth exists concurrently and simultaneously, Mr. Jones. So quality of education is a different thing. If you compare a university graduate in Liberia to let's say an 8th grade student in Rwanda, there's no comparison. Or even an 8th grade student in Ghana. And this is because our education system, this is one of the greatest disappointments of mine with the previous administration, was a failure to build the institutions that build human beings. You cannot do anything unless your citizens are capable. You have to build human capacity before you can build a country. Rwanda is a really unique situation because the Tutsi who are controlling the country are highly educated people, even after the genocide. And the period of trauma was it was a horrible period, but it was very short. Infrastructure wasn't damaged. They lost a lot of villagers, and the people who had the capacity fled. Most of them were able to escape and return. So you have a lot of returnees that were not affected by the genocide. The Watusi people of Rwanda per capita are the most educated ethnic group on the continent of Africa. You've got doctors, lawyers, engineers. These are highly educated people that are capable of managing not only a government, but a country and a private sector. And until we can build our own capacities to a level, that is going to be a challenge for any president. Because you can have the most brilliant architectural plan that you want. If your citizens do not have the ability to fill in those gaps, it's going to fail. We have to have a president and leaders that are willing to build the institutions that build human beings. Schools, healthcare. These things are important. We need healthcare so children can be healthy and their brains can develop properly. We need education institutions, not just buildings, but we need actual professors and educators. We need to train our teachers. My children went to school in Liberia, one of the best schools in Liberia. And the teachers would write notes to me, some of the best paid teachers in Liberia. And they could not even write properly. University graduates were teaching my children and they could not even write properly. So we sit here all the time, we talk about education. It is important for us to tell the truth that we are selling our whole generation of people short. We're not giving them what they need to compete, even within the region. Even within the region. And this is unfortunate. And to the decentralization point, I know you asked me to respond to Alex, but the decentralization point, yes, two things can be true. Services were definitely decentralized.
Extended, decentralized.
Yeah, political decentralization is a different issue. Mayors and superintendents, in my opinion, should be elected. That is something that has to go back to the Supreme Court. Again, the Supreme Court needs to reinstate that. Mayors, in my opinion, mayors and superintendents should be elected. That way they'll have independence and there'll be even more of a control for the local populations when they're electing the city mayors, the superintendents, the town chiefs. That is very important. That's how our country is designed, and that's how it should be implemented. Things should be implemented. We've been far away from war long enough. I think we should start talking about decentralizing some of those things as well. But we have to build human capital. We have to build human capital in Liberia for us to succeed.
Thank you. Kafuma Suarez, it is one thing to say the party has an ideology, but the question is, are the voters aware? I don't think so. I think we only have parties built around individual personalities. And are the voters aware, or do they even care? Or at the end, we are only voting. Gentlemen and lady, thank you so much for the time. This is Tough Talking Thursday. The one we didn't cover is tribal politics. So next week, Thursday, we're going to start with that. Everybody want to vote for their own devil, or their own tribal, or their own social economic clique. That's where they want to go. We're going to delve into that the next time we meet on Tough Talking Thursday. It's been a wonderful discussion. Now I will get your closing comments. Let's go around the room. And let me start with economist Depu Zuo. Depu, 1 minute.
I know we have a long time, but one thing I know, Liberia crisis had a complex issue with regards to the progression. You will see that one of the main reasons why we lost track is that the civil war will reach a point where we have several interim governments and things get scattered, no leadership and no direction. So as a result, that's why to rebuild, it has been very complex for us. So we need to really face the reality that, look, we cause problem as people, we need to fight together and resolve it together. So the issue of justice should be something that we can fight it together and resolve it together. And before I close, Mr. Comey, one thing we're talking about decentralization got stages. What was done there is deconcentration. That was a distribution of resources that started, in the sense that people will have to go other places, the health sector, in fact, financial, fiscal, decentralization, also taking tax collection, and redistribution taking place. It's just that we needed to build on the system. That's why we need to look at how we build our political structure and not by individual will. I thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope that we can discuss the tribal issue and how it's also affecting not only the political space, it's also affecting the economic space. It's also affecting production, and it have affected labor productivity, because people want the tribal people to work for them the same way they do in government, the same thing they do in business. We're not looking for quality, we are looking for quantity, and we are not looking for the right instrument to do our work. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Depu. Let me get one last comment here from Jimmy Eastman. Is Liberians are consistently deceived? Are Liberians being consistently deceived by charlatan politicians? This is because Liberians themselves are inconsistent with the rule of law and compliance to law. That is pivotal to changing the culture of corruption and impunity. Jimmy continues, what good for Paul is good for Mary and John too. And anytime you use these names, I'd like to change that and say, what good for Say is good for Paul is good for Where as well. Mr. Kune, your closing remarks.
Well, I want to thank my fellow panelists for the spirited discussion. As a country, we do face tremendous challenges. many issues that we have to come together to resolve. It will do us well if we set aside the politics and look at the common issues that confront us. We can be different at the same time, come together on issues that we all agree to. We should agree on the issue of the war crime code. We should agree on basic things like clean voter roll. Those things shouldn't be politicized. We should agree on eliminating political violence from our politics. Those things shouldn't be politicized. At the same time, we should agree on the issue of justice. But as we agree on the issue of justice for war crime, we should also look at the issue of both economic and social justices throughout the country. My people in my village, they are crying out. They have not seen anything close to the kind of life that is in Monrovia. Nothing, no paved road. They have not even seen a pipe-borne water. They have not even seen electricity. These are all justice issues. So justice is not a monolithic term. Another man justice can be injustice to the other person. So let us expand the meaning of justice. People in the villages and in the towns, they deserve the same services that we see in Liberia. They need to see good motor car. They need to see good street. They need to see good life. These are all justice issues. We shouldn't limit justice issue to just putting people in jail. That would be a narrow definition of justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney. One last comment before I come to you, Carl, from Mayfield Deco. George Weah served as Peace Ambassador under Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Mr. Cooney. So if Cummings received a award from Hall, George Weah accepted the position of Peace Ambassador. So what Mayfield is saying, both of them, in your world, received something from a war crime perpetrator. Carl, your final statement.
I just want to say that, this whole idea, we didn't really talk about corruption, but we should. And I think Liberians like to put corruption on political parties. And there's two things going on. You have ineptitude, you have corruption, you have a combination of both. And corruption is almost an endemic thing in a society. People's churches, people's schools, government, the citizens, there needs to be a reorientation. And the idea that you're going to go to America and recruit people to leave six-figure salaries and go leave in the prime of their careers and go to Liberia and serve in an environment that is unsafe, unsanitary. You've got airborne illnesses. You've got very poor healthcare. Most Liberians in the diaspora would not even consider or contemplate doing that. So you have a situation where you have people who are recruited based on their relationships. Sometimes those people mean well, and sometimes they're just looking for an opportunity. And I think one of the things that needs to start happening with the recruitment process, if we're going to say we're going to be reaching out to diaspora people, check the person's credit. That's what I do at work. I make sure before we hire someone, we do background checks. We do background checks. We make sure that this person also pays their bills. If you don't pay your bills, you're irresponsible, usually. If you have a criminal record, if you've done things that are irresponsible, you probably are, if you never owned a home and you're 50 years old and you've lived in America for 30 years, that's a red flag. If you were not able to adequately adapt, or your school that you attended and got your credentials from is a degree mill and not a real university. These are some of the things that when recruiting talent, they need to be looking at. And even with that, there needs to be an orientation and a constant training about corruption, code of conduct. You should make people do these things every 3 months, put them through this process of reorientation. Not only just officials, but down to civil servants need to be trained about what is appropriate to do and what is not appropriate. You'd be surprised to know that people have so much normalized corrupt acts that they don't even know it's wrong. I worked in Liberia among people who didn't even understand that they were doing corrupt things. But what happened? The person just gave me small tea so I could expedite this for them. What's wrong with that? Hey, the woman get hard time. Because In America, when you're in a position of public trust, they make you continuously go through reorientation and testing on a regular basis. Some companies it's annual, some companies it's quarterly, depending on what your responsibilities are. I am constantly having to take tests for integrity related tests and training. Everyone should do that. Anyone who's working with public trust, with banking sector, with government in the United States, they have to go through these things.
Thank you.
That needs to be implemented in Liberia. That is a big first step. And in schools, it needs to be implemented in the curriculum. Integrity should be something that's implemented and taught from early childhood, like it is here in America. They start teaching children from 2 years old. Wait in line, wait your turn, don't lie, share.
Share, yeah.
We need to start doing that in the society in Liberia as well.
Thank you so much, Cole. I want to thank you, Depu, and Mr. Kuni as well for the discussion tonight. This is Tough Talking Thursday, and I don't think we talked tough enough tonight. Maybe we did. I want to tell all our viewers, thank you so much for watching. Keep it here on Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. On tomorrow, please, we're going to have our literary hour. It comes on every Saturday at 6 o'clock. That will be the literary hour. And don't forget, we are on the radio in Monrovia every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We also having on Saturday, on Friday night, two people. One is going to make the case for President Weah's re-election, and that person is Arthur Wiado, and Anthony Gay is going to make the case for Ellis Cummings' re-election. You don't want to miss that Friday.
Re-election?
No, Ellis Cummings' election as president of Liberia to go against President Weah, or in the words of VP Boakai, take down Weah. You see that. Then on Sunday, you advocate Hassan Belete will be here to talk about his organization and the accusation against him that he's been coaching, witnessing, and giving them money to lie on people in war crimes court. You don't want to miss that with Hassan, who's with us from Monrovia. Until then, on behalf of all of us here at Focus on Liberia, my name is Dennis Jah, who is signing off with our closing song that says, "We are all Liberian." No, it's very important to say this. Whether you support the war crimes court or not, whether you believe or perpetrators of some of the worst crimes, war crimes, were granted amnesty and shouldn't be held. Whatever your view is, whether you believe the Liberty Party is falling apart, whether you believe President Weah will be re-elected or he's going to be a one-term president, no matter what you believe, we are all Liberians, and we must do whatever it takes to make Liberia the glorious land of liberty. Good night, and God bless you.
We are Liberians. Liberian people.